Hey guys, it's Tariq here with another video. We're going to talk about MicroStrategy, which is currently doing business as Strategy. Okay, they've recently shortened the name. And guys, I posted a previous video back in 2024, around April 2024, I believe. So be sure to check out my previous video on strategy stock, where I told you guys kind of the whole thesis that I was thinking behind it. And since I published a video, it's up about 100%. And so I published that previous video around, I think it was around this time last year. Stock was like 130, 140 bucks, something like that. Okay, and then it had a massive run up, as high as 530, and now it's still up about 100% from when I posted that video. So congrats to you guys that watched that video. Hope you guys made some money. But I wanted to make a little update. In fact, I'm going to be posting more updates like this because since we're currently in the bull run and we're currently in the second half of the current bull run cycle, I just feel like it's really important to pay attention to a lot of the things that are going on because stuff's about to get real. So I came across this thread on Reddit. It says, MicroStrategy admits it may need to sell Bitcoin in 2026. So I wanted to dig deeper into this, kind of explain it because it's really complicated. Okay, obviously I advocate holding Bitcoin outright. Very easy to do. You don't have to worry about this stuff. But if you want to invest in MSTR, kind of diversify yourself away aside from just holding Bitcoin outright, it can get tricky. And this is the reason why is because MicroStrategy uses a lot of leverage. Okay, so they use a lot of leverage to acquire their Bitcoin. So let's just dig into the story. It says in a risk disclosure this week, Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, currently doing business strategy, admitted that circumstances may mean it has to sell some of its Bitcoin by next year. Any sale will break years of claims from Saylor that the company plans to never sell. Okay, so obviously we know Saylor, he's very active on X. He always says, do not sell your Bitcoin. But there's a couple of things that could really go wrong, okay? So obviously, the article talks a little bit about this, and I want to kind of talk about this in depth, kind of really break it down. So it says in the 8K filing this week, MicroStrategy lawyers admitted there are actually several reasons why the company might sell its Bitcoin. Okay, the company is heavily indebted. Okay, it isn't up that much on its current Bitcoin holdings. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so they also have about $8 billion in loans. And obviously, they must end up making these interest payments, okay? And a lot of these loans are convertible. Now, the good thing about these loans is they're not convertible for a few years. But like I said, Bitcoin hasn't really done what it's done historically in this current cycle, okay? The company also has some dividend payment obligations on its two new yield products, STRK and STRF, okay? They have to eventually make payments on these dividends. So what's going on? Okay, well, the article kind of just talks about it vaguely, but let's really break it down. So what's going on? The only way to do this, you're going to have to dig into the SEC filing. So this was recently filed, okay, April 7, 2025. Let's take a look at it. So to kind of back up, we got to take a look at exactly what strategy actually holds. So as of this filing, they have 528,000 Bitcoin. And their average purchase price is $67,458 per Bitcoin. So they spent about $35 billion on their Bitcoin. Nice. So we know this $67,000 point is kind of a benchmark to look at, not just in terms of purchasing Bitcoin like in the market itself, but as this is the price that is the floor, I think, for a lot of people, simply because if Bitcoin dips below 67,000, then MicroStrategy will be losing money on its Bitcoin bet, which is not a good thing. But I really wouldn't worry about that because I believe the price of Bitcoin around election day was like 68,000, something like that. So historically, Bitcoin has never dipped below its election day price. Okay, so I wouldn't worry about Bitcoin going below 67,000. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are quite familiar with this, and obviously know that if it dips below the Saylor price point, which is 67K, a lot of people will come in and buy it. So let's take a look at some of this information here. So as we can see here, one of the problems I think that happened with strategy is that they tried to buy too much Bitcoin too soon. So They had this huge plan to, it was like 21 billion, to raise 21 billion in capital and do 21 billion in offerings. But the problem is that they kind of blew through a lot of that capital too quickly. So they ended up coming up with these like ancillary products. So we have STRK. So these are just like yield products that pay a certain like dividend every year. It gives it gives basically strategy the opportunity to raise cash. So as you can see here, they did an offering. They did a public offering on STRK, 7.3 million shares. They got $563.3 million. So they used that cash, and then they did another ATM as well. So this is all basically to move towards raising capital to buy Bitcoin. And they also did this on another product called STRF. Once again, same thing. Public offering, pays a 10% yield, raised $711.2 million. Okay, so what's the problem here? Well, the problem here is just like the article mentioned, they need to make interest payments on this debt, and they need to pay the dividends. And Bitcoin hasn't really gone up. Okay, Bitcoin is really only up. It's around like $81,000, $82,000. It was 69K back in April 2021. So it's been nearly 4 years, and Bitcoin is only up like $12,000 since the all-time high and back in April 2021. This is a problem. So it's a problem because how is strategy going to make these payments? Okay, the underlying enterprise business doesn't really make a lot of money, and the company has basically gotten a lot of attention by basically borrowing money and issuing stock to buy Bitcoin. Okay, so what we're looking at here, we're going to actually like go over the part that really shows exactly what the huge problem is. So if we take a look at some of these convertible notes here, okay, we look at these notes, we can see, okay, most of these notes aren't due for a few years. That's good. So that gives the company plenty of time for Bitcoin to go up. But eventually they're going to have to figure out a way to either take profits on Bitcoin or get the enterprise business to actually generate revenue. So how much are their interest payments? Okay, well, the interest payments aren't that bad. Okay, so it says for the first Q1 2025, the company incurred $8.65 million in interest expense, and they paid $8.22 million in interest related to the convertible notes. Okay, fine. So they're only spending like about $8 million, something like that, per quarter, which is like annualized like $32 million, $33 million a year on the interest payments. That's not that bad. But the problem is, what happens if Bitcoin drops? Okay, Bitcoin has been like really crazy. I obviously I'm still bullish, but what's going on? It hasn't really followed historical trends. So now let's find the part where they actually talk about how they need to possibly sell Bitcoin. So here we go. So it's actually mentioned right here. So this is on this section right here. It says a significant decrease in the market value of our Bitcoin is going to adversely affect our ability to satisfy our financial obligations. So it says as of March 31st, 2025, our outstanding indebtedness was 8.22 billion, and our annual contractual interest expense was 35.1 million. Okay, so a little bit more. So 35 million. So basically they have interest expense of 35 million and they owe 8.22 billion. Okay? They also have a $1.61 billion aggregate notional value of the preferred stock on the STRK and STRF, right? And they have dividend payments of $146 million a year. Our interest analytics software business has not generated positive cash flow from operations in recent periods and may not generate significant cash flow from operations to satisfy these financial obligations in future periods. Not good. Okay? So where does it mention that they need to sell their Bitcoin? Well, as they continue on saying, the part is right here. As Bitcoin constitutes the vast bulk of assets on our balance sheet, if we're unable to secure equity or debt financing in a timely manner on favorable terms at all, we may be required to sell Bitcoin to satisfy our financial obligations. And we may be required to make such sales at prices below our cost basis. Any such sale of Bitcoin may have a material adverse effect on our operating results and financial condition, could impair our ability to secure additional equity or debt financing in the future. Whoa, this is bad. Okay, now this is the only reason this is bad is simply because I would say there are two problems that I have. Number one, it's been it's been going on 5 years since Saylor made his first Bitcoin purchase in August 2020, okay? So that's kind of when the stock really started taking off. So if we go back here and take a look, this like historical chart here, we can see that basically the stock was doing basically nothing back then, right? Split adjusted, it was like 20, it's like, it was really cheap, okay? It was like 14, 15 bucks. So since then, the stock is up a ton, okay? It's up pretty much over, about 2,000%. I can show you in the metrics. Okay, like I said, here are the metrics right on the website. It's over 2,000%. But the problem is that that's pretty much all the company has done. They haven't done anything else. And this was obviously going to be a problem in the future by borrowing billions and billions of dollars to purchase Bitcoin. Yet the company isn't, the profit isn't that much. They haven't made a much profit so far. Obviously, Bitcoin's been down and they are up. Don't get me wrong here. But the problem is that where is the income going to come to make these debt payments? You see what I'm saying? Where is they started selling products? Where's the money going to come to cover these things? Now, I know a lot of people were thinking if Bitcoin hits, continues on the bull run in 2025, let's say Bitcoin hits 150K, 200K, something like that. And then in 2026, following historical trends, we expect Bitcoin to experience a bear market. 2026 is probably the time where most people are going to be taking profits, I would assume. They've been holding, the last bear market was 2022. Usually Bitcoin follows a 4-year halving cycle. So 2026 would be potentially the bear market. Well, here we are. We're already through Q1 and we're already in Q2 2025, and Bitcoin already ran pretty high, ran to like 109, 110K, and then it's crashed. Okay, there's been some macroeconomic issues that have been affecting the price. The economy hasn't been great. We have Trump's tariffs. We have a lot of issues that have kind of affected the price. I think a lot of people, since Trump was elected, there's been a lot of job cuts. The government's been reduced. So I think a lot of people have been selling Bitcoin to either cover expenses or just moving the money into other assets. Gold's up. Okay. People maybe move the money in safety and bonds. They potentially already took their profits. But what does this mean for strategy stock moving forward? Well, this is where things are going to get tricky because they need to generate at least the payments on the dividend are, I believe it was, let's go back to it. Okay, so here we go. So they need to make 146 million plus 35 million. Interest payments are 35 million, and then the dividends about 146 million. Okay, so we combine those two numbers together, we get roughly about $180 million in cash that strategy needs to come up with to make these payments. Now, a lot of these, like I said, a lot of these convertible notes could be converted into shares, obviously, if Bitcoin's way up. So they don't necessarily have to pay back all of this debt, but they do have to make the payments on the dividends. I'm kind of wondering why why these yield shares came into play. It really changed a lot and just kind of made it put a lot more pressure on the company to generate cash flow, because before, with just 35 million in annual interest, it really wasn't that big of a deal. We would assume that most of these convertible notes would be in the green, right? So look at them, in 2028, okay. Most people would assume that by 2028, we should be well into the next bull cycle, and hopefully Bitcoin would be up a ton, and then strategy stock would be up a ton as well, and then these notes would just be convertible, and the debt wouldn't be a big deal. But the problem is these extra products and just these extra things that just came into play where I think just greed took over a little bit too much, And they were just trying to raise money too quickly to buy too much Bitcoin at too fast of a pace. So what does this mean for MSTR stock? Well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. This definitely explains why a lot of people are holding IBIT, they're holding Bitcoin outright, because if Bitcoin kind of disappoints, right? Let's say Bitcoin doesn't go to 200K. Let's say it just kind of tops out like 125K, 130K, and then crashes in 2026. MSTR stock is going to really tank, okay? And, you know, this is definitely something people really need to watch out for. I'm going to show you guys a historical chart of MSTR stock. They've had a massive crash in the past. So, you know, in the past, before Saylor bought Bitcoin, he had a period during the dot-com boom where the stock price soared and it dumped. So, you know, looking at this green bar here, kind of matches up a little bit here, and then we have a spike back in 2000, and then we had a spike back in 2024, and then a massive sell-off. So, am I worried about MSTR stock over the next 6 to 12 months? Absolutely. Okay, that's just simply because don't be surprised if the company has to trim some of this 528,000 in Bitcoin. Now, the good news is, remember, they have about $180 million worth of basically, you know, cash flow obligations, right? The dividends and the interest payments. The good news is that let's say Bitcoin does go up a ton, right? Let's say Bitcoin, let's say it hits 200K, okay, hopefully, you know, at least does like a double, hits 200K, and then they're like, okay, well, we need to sell some of this Bitcoin to take some profits. That's fine, because we can do some quick math here. So if we just pull up the calculator, okay, pull up a calculator, and then let's say they need to generate $180 million dividend payments. Let's say they need to generate $200 million. So let's just do 200 million, make sure that's right, 200 million. And then let's say Bitcoin hits 200K. Okay, so they only need to sell like 1,000 Bitcoin, okay? So 1,000 Bitcoin to make those payments. So instead of having 528,000 Bitcoin, they're going to have 527,000 Bitcoin. You get my drift here. As long as Bitcoin continues moving up, they will have to eventually sell some Bitcoin. Don't get us wrong. This thing of never sell is ridiculous. It's just not reality. Everyone needs to eventually take some profits, okay? That's why I kind of preach using Bitcoin as a savings account, because when you use Bitcoin as a savings account, it forces you to sell some Bitcoin. We don't want it where everyone just holds their Bitcoin and no one ever sells. That's ridiculous. We want hyper-Bitcoinization, where Bitcoin replaces fiat currencies, where Bitcoin is the default global reserve currency, and people use Bitcoin for doing things like saving money, buying groceries. That's the end goal. The goal is not to just hold all of your Bitcoin and never touch it. No, that's not the point of it. And it can't be like that, because if it were like that, it wouldn't be a currency, right? It would just be like digital gold 2.0. It doesn't have a utility. So we don't want that. So just realize that, yes, in the next 6 to 12 months, if Saylor and his team has to sell some Bitcoin, it's going to negatively affect the price. So I'm definitely worried a little bit. Also, I would say in the next 12 months, in 2026, how strategy responds in the bear market, because I pretty much, my predictions are, I think strategy will kind of run higher. It'll probably run higher. So I think like a nice price target would be about probably, you know, well over $600, $700, $800, and then it could come crashing back down. So, but if you guys are holding long term, I wouldn't worry. Okay, if you guys are holding 5, 10, 20 years, just hodl your shares, keep accumulating. Don't worry about this. But this is something we have to talk about, because this news won't set good in the media. If sellers start selling Bitcoin, and probably a lot of people will start copying them. But when strategy sells, and they are going to sell some of their Bitcoin, okay, over the next year, I guarantee they will sell some of their Bitcoin. That should be a good sign for you to take some profits as well. Just basically follow along what they're doing. That would be taking profits on Bitcoin as well as strategy stock. I think when Saylor announces that the company is selling some of their Bitcoin to meet their $180 million a year in payments and dividends requirements, right? Their obligations. I think that would be a good sign that that's near the top of the market. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Nothing to worry about too much, but just realize that the company could end up trimming a little bit of their Bitcoin, probably a couple thousand at most. It won't get to the point where they need to sell half of the position, anything crazy like that. Just a small haircut. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys enjoy my content, please subscribe to the channel for more videos from me. And that's all I got. Until next time, guys. Take care.